I folded my worth into every sharp crease. That's what it felt like that night in the office, when the brochures for tomorrow's open home lay stacked in front of me. Crisp sheets, glossy finish, the kind of marketing material that clients notice. And there I was, folding them again and again, as if every crease wasn't just about paper, but about me. The first few folds came easy, but then the sharp edge of the paper pressed against my fingers, leaving faint red marks. I didn't stop. I couldn't stop, because each fold had to be exact. If one was even slightly crooked, I tossed it aside and started again. The pile of discards grew faster than the neat stack. The office around me had emptied hours ago. The hum of the printer was long gone. The only sound left was the shuffle of paper, the snap of a crease, the thud of another imperfect brochure hitting the bin. And yet, inside me, it was louder than ever. Every crease carried judgment. Every tiny flaw screamed failure. I told myself it wasn't about the brochures. It was about the client. It was about representing the property well. It was about the agency's reputation. But underneath all those justifications was the truth. It was about me. Because if the fold was sharp enough, maybe I would be too. If the stack looked flawless, maybe I could be flawless too. That's how perfection pressure works. It sneaks into the smallest tasks, even folding brochures, and convinces you that your worth is at stake. I remember my hands trembling, not from fatigue, but from fear. Fear that if I settled for good enough, it would expose me. Fear that people would see the mistake, the weakness, the imperfection, and then see me as a mistake, too. So I kept folding, crease after crease, as if I could crease out the doubt inside me. But it didn't work. Because the sharper the paper edges got, the sharper my inner critic became, the voice that told me, if you can't get this right, you can't get anything right. If you can't be flawless here, you'll never be enough anywhere. That's when I realized I wasn't just folding paper. I was folding my own sense of worth into those stacks. And every time I threw one away, I threw away a piece of myself. If you've ever been trapped in that loop, you know how exhausting it is. The way perfection turns ordinary tasks into trials. The way it convinces you that unless everything is flawless, nothing counts. The way it whispers that one crease, one mistake, one slip-up erases everything you've done right. That was me, sitting alone in a quiet office, surrounded by wasted paper and wasted hours, trying to fold myself into someone worthy of approval. And all I felt was smaller. I thought flawless would finally prove me. That was the belief driving me, deeper than I wanted to admit. It wasn't really about brochures or presentations or even clients. It was about proving myself, proving I belonged in an industry filled with seasoned agents who seemed sharper, quicker, smoother, proving I wasn't just the young woman trying to catch up, proving to my parents that their eldest daughter hadn't wasted her education, hadn't fallen short of community comparisons, proving to myself that I could be enough, if only I was flawless. I thought perfection was the key that would unlock acceptance. It wasn't just work that taught me that. It was home, too. Growing up, praise often came when I aced an exam, when I brought home a certificate, when I achieved something that could be shown to relatives. Mistakes were tolerated, but quietly frowned upon. "Next time, be more careful," my father would say. "Don't let people think you're careless." My mother's comparisons were subtler, but they cut deeper. "Did you hear so-and-so's daughter just bought a house?" She never makes silly errors. So I absorbed the lesson. Mistakes shrink you. Perfection proves you. And I carried that lesson into my career. Every email is triple-checked. Every property brochure scrutinized. Every word in client meetings rehearsed silently before spoken. Because if I left no cracks, maybe no one could question me. But here's the truth I didn't want to face. Flawless never proved me. It only trapped me. Because perfection is a moving target. The moment I reached it, the bar moved higher. A flawless brochure didn't quiet the doubt. It only set up the next flawless task I had to chase. A perfect sales pitch didn't make me feel secure. It only made me terrified of slipping the next time. And underneath it all was the constant voice. You're not enough unless you erase every flaw. That's why folding brochures felt like life or death. That's why every crease mattered more than it should. That's why I stayed alone in the office long after everyone else had gone home. It wasn't about the task. It was about my identity. And the more I clung to flawless, the less human I felt. Because here's the cruel irony. Chasing perfection didn't make me feel strong. It made me fragile, like glass that could shatter with one slip, like paper that cut skin when the edge was too sharp. I thought flawless would finally prove me, but instead, it only proved how impossible the demand really was. And I know I'm not alone in this. Maybe for you, it's not brochures. Maybe it's the report you edit until midnight, terrified of a typo. Maybe it's the assignment you rewrite 3 times before submitting, never believing it's enough. Maybe it's the way you rehearse conversations in your head, convinced that stumbling over one word will expose you. Perfection convinces us we're protecting ourselves, but really, it's just exhausting us. And if we never challenge it, the cost is high. The cost is our time. The cost is our joy. The cost is our sense of being worthy, even when we're human. That's the trap I was in that night. Folding, discarding, folding again, chasing proof that never came. And I realized if I didn't find another way, I would live my whole life this way. Perfect on the surface, empty inside. There came a breaking point. After hours of folding and discarding, I slammed the last imperfect stack into the bin and just stared at the scraps. My hands were raw, fingertips aching from the sharp edges of paper. My body slumped forward over the desk. And in that moment, a sentence surfaced, clear and simple, like a truth that had been waiting for me all along. Well enough is enough. It wasn't loud. It wasn't triumphant. It was quiet, almost tired, but it was the first thought that didn't sound like my inner critic. It sounded like relief. I sat back, breathing slowly, and let the words repeat inside me. Well enough is enough. Something shifted. For so long, I had believed that flawlessness was the only proof, that unless I eliminated every crease, erased every error, I would never measure up. But as I looked at the scattered brochures, I realized something. My clients weren't choosing me because I could fold paper into perfect symmetry. They were choosing me because I listened, because I cared, because I showed up. Perfection wasn't what won trust. Presence did. I thought of the brochures that had already made it into the bin. Slightly crooked, slightly uneven. Did those flaws really erase the hours of work I had poured into serving my clients? Did one imperfect crease mean I wasn't capable, professional, or trustworthy? Number. What erased me wasn't the flaw itself. It was the belief that a flaw erased me. Well enough is enough. It became a mantra that loosened something in me. For the first time, I could see that perfection wasn't protecting me. It was punishing me. And maybe, just maybe, being good enough wasn't a weakness. Maybe it was freedom. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and imagined what it would feel like to live that way. To set something down, not because it was flawless, but because it was finished. To let good enough be a doorway to rest, not a sentence of guilt. To finally let my worth exist outside of how sharp the creases looked. It was like loosening a grip I hadn't realized was strangling me. Because here's the thing, perfection had promised me safety, but it had only given me exhaustion. And when I whispered, "Well enough is enough," I felt a flicker of safety return. Not from flawless work, but from permission. Permission to be human. Permission to be present. That's when the reframe landed. Perfection doesn't prove me. Presence does. And presence only comes when I let enough be enough. But good enough is powerful enough. That's what I repeat to myself now, especially in the moments when my inner critic sharpens its edge. And to live that truth, I've been practicing a reset with 2 parts, visualization and micro movement. Here's how it works for me. First, visualization. When I catch myself spiraling into perfection, checking the same email draft over and over, fussing with tiny details no one else will notice, I pause. I close my eyes and picture the sharp edge of the brochure paper. I imagine it as the voice of my inner critic, cutting me, stinging me, reminding me that one slip makes me unworthy. And then I soften the image. I picture placing the paper down gently on the desk, not tossing it, not fighting it, just setting it down. And as I do, I imagine the voice quieting, the edge dulling, the criticism dissolving into something warmer. That visualization helps me take the critic out of power. It reminds me that I can choose presence over punishment. Second, micro movement. Instead of trying to force myself into huge acts of self-acceptance, I anchor the shift in small, physical gestures. When I notice my jaw clenched, I release it. When I catch my shoulders hunched, I roll them back. When I feel my hands tense from gripping too tightly, I shake them out. Each movement is my way of saying, good enough is powerful enough. Sometimes, I even pair it with words, out loud. I'll exhale and whisper, enough, as if naming it can break the spell. The practice is simple, but it brings me back to my body, back to presence. Because perfection lives in the head, always analyzing, always comparing. Presence lives in the body. And when I move, even slightly, I return to the truth that I don't have to prove myself with flawless creases or endless corrections. I just have to be here. Over the course of the week, I practice this again and again. When I felt the urge to rewrite a client report for the 4th time, I pictured the sharp paper edge, then set it down in my mind. When I caught myself hovering over a text to a friend, terrified of wording it wrong, I rolled my shoulders back and whispered, "Enough." When I noticed the perfection loop tightening around me late at night, I let my hands rest on my chest, took a slow breath, and remembered, presence proves more than perfection. By Friday, I had begun to feel a difference. Not that the critic disappeared. It still showed up, sharp as ever. But I had a way to answer it, a way to soften it, a way to move back into presence. And that, more than flawless work, felt like real proof. Because I can't control whether every crease lines up, but I can choose to put the stack down and let myself breathe. Good enough is powerful enough. And every time I live that truth, in a breath, in a gesture, in a choice, I rise a little freer. Looking back on that night with the brochures, I can see more clearly what I couldn't see then. It was never really about paper. It was about the weight I had folded into every crease. The belief that if I could get things flawless, then maybe I would finally be enough. But here's what I know now. Flawless never proved me. What proved me was showing up. What proved me was caring. What proved me was presence. That's why this week's shift matters so much. Because when I let myself place the stack on the desk, imperfect as it was, I learned something I couldn't learn from perfection. I learned freedom. It wasn't a big, dramatic freedom. It was subtle, almost quiet, like air slowly filling my lungs after I hadn't realized I was holding my breath. At work, it meant I could hand a client a brochure without obsessing over the crease, because I trusted that my relationship with them mattered more than the fold. At home, it meant I could join a family dinner without rehearsing perfect answers to every question, because I trusted that presence was more valuable than polish. And within myself, it meant I could finally sit still without feeling like imperfection made me unworthy of rest. Perfection had promised me safety, but it had only chained me to exhaustion. Letting enough be enough gave me something better than safety. It gave me space. Space to breathe, space to try, space to fail, and keep going anyway. That space is where real confidence grows, not from flawless execution, but from living fully, creases, cracks, and all. And I think about how many years I wasted chasing perfection, as though it could finally silence my doubts. Instead, every flawless task only raised the bar higher. The relief never lasted. The inner critic never stopped. But this week, something shifted. The critic still whispers, still sharp, But I don't have to obey it. I don't have to crease myself smaller to fit its standards. Because good enough is powerful enough. That's the truth I want to carry forward. Not as a slogan, not as a trick, but as a practice. A way of living that makes room for imperfection. Because imperfection is human, and presence is what makes it meaningful. Presence proves more than perfection. It took me years to learn it. Years of sharp paper edges cutting into my skin. Years of nights wasted chasing flawless folds. Years of believing that the only proof was perfection. But now I see differently. Presence proves more than perfection. My worth isn't folded into creases. It's lived in the way I show up. The brochures sit on the desk, uneven, imperfect, but done. Their edges don't line up, yet somehow they belong together, the way I do in this moment. The air feels still, my hands finally still with it. There's a softness here I've been chasing for years. The quiet that comes when I stop proving and start breathing. Perfection never gave me this feeling. Only presence did. And maybe that's the real finish line. Not flawless work, but the peace that settles when I finally let enough be enough.